My name is Sarah Mitchell and I'm 28 years old now. What I'm about to tell you is the story of how I lost my family at 13 and found a real one in the most unexpected place. This isn't a story about forgiveness or reconciliation. This is about justice, consequences, and the difference between people who call themselves parents and people who actually earn that title. Before I tell you what happened at that graduation ceremony, when my biological mother sat frozen in her seat while 847 people watched me honor the woman who actually raised me, I need to take you back to where it all started. Back to St. Mary's Hospital, room 314, on a Tuesday afternoon in October when I was just 13 years old. I remember the exact smell of that hospital room. Antiseptic mixed with something floral from the air freshener they used. I was sitting on the examination table, my legs dangling because I was still small for my age, wearing one of those paper gowns that never close properly in the back. Dr. Patterson had just finished explaining my diagnosis to my parents. Acute lymphoblastic leukemia. Well, they called it. The most common type of childhood cancer, he said, but also one of the most treatable. With aggressive chemotherapy, my survival rate was around 85 to 90%. Good odds, he kept saying. Really good odds. My mother, Linda, sat in the plastic chair by the window staring at a spot on the wall. My father, Robert, stood with his arms crossed, his face getting redder by the minute. My older sister, Jessica, 16 at the time, was texting on her phone, barely paying attention. The treatment protocol will be intensive, Dr. Patterson continued, pulling up charts on his tablet. We're looking at approximately 2 to 3 years of chemotherapy. The first phase is induction therapy, which lasts about a month. Sarah will need to be hospitalized for most of that time. Then we move to consolidation and maintenance phases, which can be done outpatient but will require frequent hospital visits. How much? That was the first thing my father said. Not, is she going to be okay? Or, what can we do to help? Just, how much? Dr. Patterson cleared his throat. With your insurance, you'll be responsible for roughly 20% of the costs. Over the full treatment course, that could be anywhere from $60,000 to $100,000 out of pocket. But we have financial assistance programs, payment plans. My father's laugh was harsh and cold. You're telling me we have to pay $100,000 because she got sick? Robert, my mother said quietly, but she didn't look at me. She still hadn't looked at me since the diagnosis. Sir, I understand this is overwhelming, Dr. Patterson said. But Sarah's prognosis is excellent. With treatment, she has every chance of beating this and living a completely normal life. Jessica is applying to colleges next year, my father said as if the doctor hadn't spoken. Yale. Princeton. She got a 1520 on her SAT. We've been saving for her education since she was born. The room went silent. Dr. Patterson looked between my parents and me, clearly uncomfortable. Perhaps we should discuss this privately? Sarah doesn't need to. Sarah needs to understand reality. My father cut him off. He finally looked at me and there was nothing in his eyes. No love. No concern. Just cold calculation. We have $180,000 in the college fund. That's for your sister's education. Her future. We're not throwing that away on medical bills. I felt something crack inside my chest and it had nothing to do with the cancer. There are other options, Dr. Patterson said, his voice strained. State programs, charity care, Medicaid. We're not taking charity, my mother spoke up suddenly, some spark of pride finally animating her face. What would people think? Then what are you suggesting? Dr. Patterson asked, and I could hear the disbelief creeping into his professional demeanor. My father looked at me for a long moment. She's 13. She can be emancipated. Become a ward of the state. Then she qualifies for full Medicaid coverage and it doesn't touch our finances. The words didn't make sense at first. I kept waiting for him to say he was kidding, that he was just stressed and didn't mean it. But he stood there, arms still crossed, face set in determination. You cannot be serious, Dr. Patterson said. We have another child to think about, my mother said, and her voice was defensive now, like she was the victim in this situation. Jessica has a future. She's going to do great things. We can't let, she gestured vaguely in my direction, this destroy everything we've built. Mom. My voice came out small, childish. I'm scared. She looked at me then, finally. You'll be fine, Sarah. The doctor said the survival rate is good. You'll get treated, you'll get better, and when you're 18 you can figure out your own life. But we can't sacrifice Jessica's future for this. I'm your daughter, I whispered. And so is Jessica, my father snapped. And she actually has potential. He's going to be a doctor or a lawyer. He's brilliant. He paused, looking me up and down. You've always been average. Average grades, average everything. We're not destroying a promising future for an average one. If you're enjoying this story, please hit that like button. But only if you're genuinely connecting with this story. I create this content to share real experiences, and your support helps me continue. Dr. Patterson stood up abruptly. I'm going to ask you to leave my office while I speak with Sarah privately. We're her parents, my mother started. Leave. Now. Dr. Patterson's voice had gone cold and hard. Or I will call security and social services. They left. Jessica followed without even glancing at me, still on her phone. The door clicked shut behind them and suddenly I couldn't breathe. The full weight of what had just happened crashed over me and I started sobbing, huge gasping sobs that made my whole body shake. Dr. Patterson pulled his chair close and waited until I could breathe again. Sarah, I need you to listen to me very carefully. What your parents just said, that's not okay. That's not legal and it's not happening. I'm calling social services right now. You're not leaving this hospital without a plan in place that puts you first. Do you understand? I nodded, wiping my face with the scratchy hospital tissues. You have cancer. That's scary and it's going to be hard. But you're going to beat this and you're going to do it surrounded by people who actually care about you. I promise you that. He kept his promise. Within an hour, a social worker named Margaret was in the room. Within 2 hours, they'd moved me to a pediatric oncology room and officially admitted me for treatment. And within 3 hours, my parents had signed emergency temporary custody papers, effectively abandoning me to the state. They didn't even say goodbye. That first night in the pediatric oncology ward was the darkest of my life. I lay in that hospital bed, hooked up to N4, surrounded by machines that beeped and hummed, and I felt more alone than I'd ever imagined possible. I wasn't scared of the cancer anymore. I was scared that no one would care if I lived or died. Then Rachel walked in for the night shift. Rachel Torres was 34 years old, a pediatric oncology nurse who'd been working at St. Mary's for 8 years. She had dark curly hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, warm brown eyes, and a smile that actually reached those eyes. She wasn't beautiful in a conventional way, but there was something about her presence that made you feel safe. Hey there, Sarah, she said, checking my chart. I'm Rachel and I'm going to be your night nurse. How are you feeling? Terrible, I said honestly. She pulled up a chair and sat down, giving me her full attention. Yeah, I heard what happened with your parents. There aren't really words for how messed up that is. I started crying again. I seemed to do nothing but cry that day. Rachel didn't tell me to stop or that everything would be okay. She just handed me tissues and waited. When I finally calmed down, she said, I'm not going to lie to you, Sarah. The next few years are going to be hard. Cancer treatment is rough. But you know what? You're tougher than cancer. You're tougher than parents who don't deserve you. And you're not alone. I'm going to be here every step of the way. You don't even know me, I said. Not yet. But I'm going to. And I have a feeling you're pretty remarkable. That night, after she'd finished her rounds, Rachel came back to my room with a deck of cards. We played Go Fish until 2 a.m. and she told me about her life. She was divorced, no kids of her own, had always wanted to be a mother but it hadn't worked out. She lived in a small house 15 minutes from the hospital, had a cat named Pancake, and was obsessed with murder mystery podcasts. Why nursing? I asked at one point. My little brother had leukemia when I was 18, she said quietly. He beat it. He's 28 now, married, has a kid. But I remember what it was like watching him go through treatment. I remember the nurses who made a difference and the ones who were just doing a job. I wanted to be the kind who makes a difference. Did your parents abandon him? The question came out before I could stop it. God, no. My whole family rallied around him. My parents went broke paying for things insurance didn't cover and they never once complained. That's what parents do, Sarah. Real parents. Over the next month, as I went through induction chemotherapy, Rachel became more than my nurse. She became my advocate, my protector, and my friend. When I was too sick to eat, she'd sit with me and tell stories until the nausea passed. When I lost my hair, she showed me photos of herself from her own bad hair phase, in high school, until I laughed. When I had nightmares about being alone forever, she held my hand until I fell back asleep. My parents didn't visit. Not once. My caseworker, Margaret, said they'd signed full surrender papers, giving up all parental rights. Jessica was busy with SAT prep and college applications. I was truly on my own. Except I wasn't. Because Rachel was there. On day 28 of my hospital stay, when the induction phase was complete and I was in remission, Dr. Patterson came in with good news. You're responding beautifully to treatment, Sarah. We can move to outpatient care now. You'll need to come in regularly for chemo, but you won't have to live here. Where will she go? Rachel asked immediately. She was technically off duty but had stayed late as she often did. Foster care, Margaret said. She was there too, always coordinating my placement. I have a family lined up. They're experienced with medical needs. I want to take her. Everyone looked at Rachel. I want to foster her. I'm already approved. I did the training 2 years ago but never had a placement. I can do this. I want to do this. Margaret and Dr. Patterson exchanged glances. Rachel, this is a long-term commitment. 2 more years of intensive treatment, then years of monitoring. I know. I want to do it. If Sarah wants to come home with me. She looked at me and I saw something in her eyes that I hadn't seen from an adult in a long time. Hope. Love. Commitment. Yes, I said. Please. The paperwork took another week. During that time, Rachel brought photos of her house, talked about the room that would be mine, asked about my preferences for paint colors and decorations. She made plans like I was permanent, not temporary. Like I was her daughter, not just a foster placement. On November 15th, exactly 1 month after my diagnosis, Rachel drove me to her small 3-bedroom house on Maple Street. She carried my single bag of belongings, everything I owned in the world, and led me inside. This is your room, she said, opening a door on the 2nd floor. I stepped inside and stopped. The walls were painted a soft lavender, my favorite color, which I'd mentioned once in passing. There was a new bed with a purple comforter, a bookshelf already stocked with young adult novels, and a desk by the window. On the desk was a framed photo of Rachel and me from the hospital, both of us smiling at the camera. Welcome home, Sarah, Rachel said softly. I broke down crying for what felt like the 100th time that month. But this time they were different tears. These were tears of relief. Of gratitude. Of hope. Rachel wrapped her arms around me and held me while I cried. You're safe now. You're home. And I'm not going anywhere. He kept that promise too. The next 2 years were hard. There's no sugarcoating chemotherapy, it's brutal. But Rachel made it bearable. She drove me to every appointment, held my hand during every infusion, and sat with me through every bout of nausea. She learned to cook all the bland foods I could tolerate during treatment. She bought me soft hats and scarves when I felt self-conscious about my bald head. She helped me keep up with schoolwork through a home hospital program. But more than that, she gave me stability. Structure. Love. Every morning, even on my worst days, Rachel would come into my room and say, "Good morning, beautiful girl. It's a gift to see your face." Every night, no matter how late her shift ran, she'd come home and check on me, sitting on my bed to hear about my day. On good weeks, we'd go to the movies or the park. On bad weeks, we'd camp out on the couch with blankets and watch terrible reality TV. She never once complained about the cost. Insurance covered most of my treatment, but there were still expenses. Co-pays, medications, special foods, supplies. Rachel's house was small and modest, and I later learned she'd taken out a second mortgage to cover some of the costs. She never told me that at the time. She just made sure I had everything I needed. 6 months into my treatment, Rachel sat me down at the kitchen table with a serious expression. "Sarah, I need to ask you something important." My heart sank. Was she sending me back to foster care? Had she changed her mind? "I want to adopt you. Legally. Permanently. Not just foster care. I want you to be my daughter. My real daughter. Would that be okay with you?" I couldn't speak. I just nodded and cried, and Rachel cried too, and we held each other in that kitchen until Pancake the cat got jealous and demanded attention. The adoption process took another 4 months, but on my 14th birthday, I officially became Sarah Torres. Rachel threw a small party with some of her friends and a few kids I'd met through the hospital's support group. We ate chocolate cake. I was having a good week and could actually keep food down. And Rachel gave me a necklace with a pendant that had both our initials intertwined. "You're mine now," she said, fastening it around my neck. "Forever." Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching this from. Your support means everything to me. When I was 15 and finally finished active treatment, entering the maintenance phase with just monthly checkups, Rachel sat me down for another serious talk. You've missed almost 2 years of normal school. You're academically behind, and that's not your fault. You've been fighting for your life. But I want you to know something. You're brilliant, Sarah. I've watched you devour those books, ask questions that make doctors think twice, problem solve in ways that amaze me. You have so much potential, and I'm not going to let cancer or your biological parents' cruelty steal that from you. She enrolled me in an online advanced curriculum program and hired a tutor. She stayed up late helping me with homework she barely understood. She celebrated every small victory, every A on a test, every concept I mastered, every goal I reached. Why are you doing all this? I asked her once when she was falling asleep over my calculus homework at 11 p.m., You work full-time. You're exhausted. Why push me so hard? She looked up and her eyes were fierce. Because your biological parents told you that you were average. That you had no potential. That your sister's future was worth saving and yours wasn't. I'm going to prove them wrong. We're going to prove them wrong. You're going to do extraordinary things, Sarah Torres, and the whole world is going to know it. By 16 I'd caught up to my grade level. By 17 I was ahead of it, taking college-level courses. Rachel's house was always filled with books, study materials, and the smell of coffee as we worked side by side. Her on nursing journals, me on AP homework. But it wasn't all academics. Rachel made sure I had a life too. She took me to concerts, museums, and plays. She taught me to cook and let me make disastrous messes in the kitchen. She introduced me to her friends who became my aunts and uncles. She made sure I went to therapy to process everything I'd been through. Healing isn't just physical, she'd say. Your heart needs care too. When I turned 18 and got the 5-year all-clear from Dr. Patterson, meaning I was officially in remission with minimal chance of relapse, Rachel took me out to our favorite restaurant. Over pasta and breadsticks she pulled out a small box. I know you're technically an adult now and you don't need me to be your legal guardian anymore. But I want you to know you're my daughter. That's never going to change. Whether you live here or move away, whether you're 18 or 80, you're my kid. Always. Inside the box was a ring, simple and silver with both our birthstones. To remind you that you're never alone, Rachel said. I wore that ring every single day. During my senior year of high school, Rachel and I started talking seriously about college. My grades were exceptional, 4.0 GPA, perfect scores on AP exams, strong SAT scores. I discovered a passion for medicine during my treatment, wanting to be like Dr. Patterson and Rachel. Someone who helps people through their darkest times. I want to apply to Johns Hopkins, I told Rachel one evening. Their pre-med program is one of the best in the country and their medical school. It's a dream. Johns Hopkins was also obscenely expensive. Even with financial aid it would be a stretch. Rachel didn't hesitate. Then that's where you're applying. We'll figure out the money. You apply to Hopkins and you're going to get in. He was right. In March of my senior year I got my acceptance letter from Johns Hopkins University with a substantial scholarship. Between the scholarship, grants, and federal loans, the cost was manageable. Rachel insisted on covering my living expenses. You focus on school, she said. I've got this. But. No buts. You're going to be a doctor. You're going to save lives. You're going to be extraordinary. That's worth every penny. I cried when I opened that acceptance letter and Rachel cried with me. We'd done it. Together we'd proven everyone wrong. I spent 4 years at Johns Hopkins working harder than I'd ever worked in my life. Pre-med was brutal. Organic chemistry, physics, biology, endless labs and papers and exams. I called Rachel almost every night, sometimes just to hear her voice, sometimes to cry about a bad grade or a hard day. You can do this, she'd say every single time. You're Sarah Torres. You beat cancer. You can beat anything. During my sophomore year I came home for Christmas break and noticed Rachel looked tired. Thinner. I asked if she was okay and she waved me off. Just working extra shifts to help with your expenses. I'm fine, honey. I later learned she'd been working 50 to 60-hour weeks, picking up every extra shift she could to make sure I never had to worry about money. She never once asked me to get a job or contribute. She just worked herself to exhaustion so I could focus on school. By my junior year I was at the top of my class. By senior year I was applying to medical schools and getting interviews at prestigious programs. And Johns Hopkins School of Medicine accepted me. 4 more years, I told Rachel on the phone when I got my acceptance. 4 more years and I'll be Dr. Torres. I'm so proud of you I could burst, Rachel said, and I could hear the tears in her voice. Your biological parents have no idea what they gave up. They lost me, I agreed. But I gained you. I'd say I got the better deal. Medical school was even more intense than undergrad. The coursework was relentless, the clinical rotations exhausting, the pressure enormous. But I loved it. I loved learning how the human body works, how to diagnose diseases, how to help people heal. I specialized in oncology, wanting to help kids like the one I'd been. Rachel came to every milestone. My white coat ceremony. My first day of clinical rotations. My residency match day. She was always there, always proud, always supportive. And through all of this, 13 years of school, hundreds of miles between us sometimes, countless stressful nights and difficult days, I never heard from my biological parents. Not a single call, email, or text. They'd moved on with their lives and I'd moved on with mine. Or so I thought. In April of my 4th year of medical school, I received the news that I'd been selected as valedictorian of my graduating class. Out of 120 brilliant students, I had the highest academic standing, the best clinical evaluations, and the strongest research record. I would give the student address at commencement. I called Rachel immediately. Mom, I have news. She'd started asking me to call her mom during my sophomore year of college. You are my mom, I'd said. The only one who matters. What's the news, baby? I'm valedictorian. I'm giving the speech at graduation. Rachel screamed so loud I had to pull the phone away from my ear. Then she was crying and laughing and talking so fast I could barely understand her. I'm so proud of you. So incredibly proud. Your speech is going to be amazing. You're going to change the world, Sarah. I always knew it. Graduation was scheduled for May 20th. Rachel asked for the day off from work months in advance. She bought a new dress. She invited all her friends, my aunts and uncles, the people who'd become my family. It was going to be a celebration. 2 weeks before graduation, I got an email from the university's events coordinator. Due to my status as valedictorian, I was allowed to submit additional names for reserved seating beyond the standard 2-guest allocation. I immediately added names. Rachel, of course, plus 6 of her closest friends who'd become family to me. The coordinator responded quickly. We actually have one additional request for your reserved section. Alinda and Robert Mitchell have contacted us claiming to be your parents and requesting seats. Should we add them to your list? I stared at that email for a full 5 minutes. Linda and Robert Mitchell. My biological parents. The people who'd abandoned me at 13, who'd told me I was average and not worth saving, who'd chosen my sister's college fund over my life. They wanted to come to my graduation. I picked up the phone and called Rachel. Mom, my biological parents want to come to graduation. There was a long pause. How do you feel about that? I don't know. Part of me wants to tell them to go to hell. Part of me wants them to see what I became despite them. What do you think I should do? It's your day, honey. Your accomplishment. Whatever you want, I'll support. But if you ask my opinion, let them come. Let them see exactly what they threw away. Let them see the woman you became with a real mother by your side. I thought about it for a long time. Then I emailed back. Yes, add them to the reserved section. I wanted them there. I wanted them to see. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of final exams, packing up my apartment and writing my valedictorian speech. I didn't tell Rachel what I was planning to say. I wanted it to be a surprise. May 20th dawned bright and clear. Johns Hopkins commencement was held at Royal Farms Arena in Baltimore, with seating for over 10,000 people. Graduates from all schools, medicine, nursing, public health, all of Hopkins, would be there along with their families. I arrived early for the graduate lineup. My white coat was pressed, my honor cords arranged perfectly. I was wearing Rachel's necklace, the one with our intertwined initials, and the ring she'd given me on my 18th birthday. As we were organizing by school and academic standing, one of the event coordinators approached me. Dr. Torres? They called us doctors even though we hadn't officially graduated yet. Your guests are seated in Section A, Row 3. Is there anything you need? No, thank you. I'm ready. The ceremony began with pomp and circumstance. Literally, they played the traditional graduation march as we filed in, 120 medical students in white coats and caps. The arena was packed, filled with the families of graduates and professors. Cameras flashed everywhere. I caught a glimpse of my section as I walked past. Rachel sat in the front, her face already wet with tears of joy, wearing the new dress she'd bought and clutching a bouquet of flowers. Next to her sat her friends, my aunts and uncles, the family I'd built. And 2 seats down, stiff and uncomfortable looking, sat Linda and Robert Mitchell. My biological parents. I hadn't seen them in 15 years. My mother looked older, grayer, more worn. My father had gained weight and lost hair. They looked ordinary, small. Nothing like the terrifying figures from my childhood memories. They didn't look at me as I passed. They seemed to be scanning the program, probably trying to figure out where their other daughter sat in the crowd. It hadn't occurred to them that their reserved seats were for me. The ceremony progressed through the standard speeches. Welcome from the dean, address from the university president, remarks from the keynote speaker, a renowned surgeon. Then it was time for the student address. And now, the dean said, stepping up to the podium, it is my tremendous honor to introduce our valedictorian, the student selected to represent the Johns Hopkins School of Medicine class of 2026. She graduated at the top of her class, conducted groundbreaking research in pediatric oncology, and impressed every single one of her professors with her compassion, intelligence, and dedication. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Sarah Torres. The arena erupted in applause. I stood and walked to the stage, my heart pounding. As I climbed the steps, I saw Rachel on her feet, clapping so hard her hands must have hurt, tears streaming down her face. I also saw my biological parents. They'd both gone very still, staring at their programs. My mother's hand was frozen halfway to her mouth. My father had gone pale. They'd figured it out. I reached the podium and adjusted the microphone. 10,000 people looked at me. I took a deep breath and began. Thank you, Dean Morrison. To our distinguished guests, faculty, families, and most importantly, my fellow graduates, congratulations. We made it. Applause and cheers. When I was 13 years old, I was diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia. I remember sitting in that hospital room, terrified, wondering if I would live or die. I remember the doctor explaining treatment options, survival rates, the long road ahead. And I remember the moment I realized I would have to walk that road alone. The arena had gone quiet. Everyone was listening. My biological parents made a choice that day. They decided that my life wasn't worth saving. That the cost of treatment was too high. That their other daughter's college education was more important than my survival. They abandoned me in that hospital room and I never saw them again. I was 13 years old, bald from chemotherapy, terrified and alone. I could see my biological mother in the audience. She'd gone completely white, her hand now pressed fully over her mouth. My father stared at his lap, refusing to look up. Around them, people were starting to whisper, glancing in their direction. But I wasn't alone for long. Because a pediatric oncology nurse named Rachel Torres. I paused, looking directly at Rachel, who was openly sobbing now. Saw a scared child who needed a family. And she didn't just treat me as her patient. She brought me into her home. She held my hand through chemotherapy. She made me laugh when I wanted to give up. She taught me that family isn't about biology. It's about showing up. It's about love. It's about believing in someone even when they don't believe in themselves. Rachel covered her face with her hands, her shoulders shaking. Rachel adopted me when I was 14. She worked double shifts to pay for my needs. She stayed up late helping me catch up on the schoolwork I'd missed. She told me I could be anything I wanted, do anything I dreamed. When I said I wanted to go to Johns Hopkins, she said, "Then that's where you're going." And here I am. The audience applauded. I waited for it to quiet. I beat cancer. I graduated high school with honors. I completed my undergraduate degree in 3 years. I excelled in medical school. I'm going to be a pediatric oncologist helping kids like the one I was. And I did all of that because one woman believed in me. One woman showed me what real love looks like. I pulled off my cap, breaking protocol, but I didn't care. This degree belongs to Rachel Torres. This accomplishment is hers as much as mine. She saved my life not just from cancer but from believing I was worthless. She taught me that I deserved to take up space in this world. That I deserved to dream big. That I deserved to be loved. I looked directly at my biological parents for the first time. My mother was crying now, but they weren't tears of joy. They were tears of realization. My father still wouldn't look up. To my biological parents who are here today, I paused, letting that sink in, letting everyone in that arena know exactly who I was talking about. Thank you for teaching me what not to be. Thank you for showing me that titles don't make family. Thank you for giving me up so that I could find my real mother. The silence was deafening. And to Mom, I looked at Rachel, who was standing now, one hand pressed to her heart. Thank you for every sacrifice. Thank you for every late night, every doctor's appointment, every tear you wiped away. Thank you for choosing me when no one else did. Thank you for being my mom. You are the reason I'm standing here today. I love you. This is for you. The arena exploded. Applause, cheers, people standing, the noise overwhelming. But I only watched Rachel, who was crying so hard she couldn't stand properly, supported by her friends. She mouthed, "I love you," and I mouthed it back. And I watched my biological parents. My mother sat frozen, her face a mask of horror and grief. My father had his head in his hands. Around them, people had figured out who they were, and the looks they were receiving were not kind. They'd come to see their abandoned daughter graduate. Instead, they'd been publicly identified as the people who'd valued money over their child's life. I finished my speech. The parts about medicine, our responsibility to patients, our oath to do no harm. But the real message had already been delivered. When I returned to my seat, my classmates stood and clapped. Several of them hugged me as I passed. The rest of the ceremony blurred together. The conferring of degrees, the moving of tassels, the recessional. All I could think about was getting to Rachel. After the ceremony ended, there was a reception in the adjacent hall. I was immediately swarmed by classmates, professors, and people I didn't know congratulating me on my speech. Through the crowd, I could see Rachel pushing her way toward me. When she reached me, we both broke down. We held each other in the middle of that crowded reception hall and cried, not caring who saw. "You didn't have to do that," Rachel sobbed. "You didn't have to give me credit." "Yes, I did. Because it's true. All of it. I'm so proud of you. So proud." We were interrupted by Dean Morrison, who wanted photos, and then by local news reporters who'd caught wind of my speech and wanted interviews. Through it all, Rachel stayed by my side, her hand in mine. I saw my biological parents once more across the hall. They were standing alone, no one approaching them, watching me from a distance. My mother looked like she wanted to come over but was too afraid. My father looked angry, his face red. They didn't approach. After about 20 minutes, they left. I found out later what happened through a series of voicemails and emails that came over the following days. Apparently, after abandoning me 15 years earlier, my parents had indeed put all their resources into Jessica's education. She'd gone to Yale, then law school. She'd gotten a high-paying job at a corporate firm. She'd met and married a wealthy investment banker. My parents had been living off the financial support Jessica provided, having spent their own savings on her education and their retirement fund on helping her buy a house. But 6 months before my graduation, Jessica's husband had been caught in an insider trading scheme. He went to prison. Jessica lost her job in the resulting scandal. Their house was seized. Jessica, now broke and disgraced, could no longer support my parents. My parents had come to my graduation hoping to reconnect. Hoping that their abandoned daughter had somehow become successful enough to help them. They'd seen my name as valedictorian and thought it was an opportunity. Instead, they got publicly shamed in front of 10,000 people. My mother's first voicemail left that night. "Sarah, it's Mom. I know what you must think of us, but we never meant. We were scared. We made a mistake. A terrible mistake. But you're doing so well now and we're so proud and we thought maybe we could. We need help. Jessica can't help us anymore and we're facing foreclosure and we thought since you're a doctor now, please call me back." I deleted it. My father's email 2 days later. "Sarah, your mother is devastated. You humiliated us in public. We made the best decision we could at the time given our circumstances. You turned out fine, so clearly we didn't ruin your life like you claimed. We're your parents. You owe us at least a conversation. Call us." I didn't respond. Over the next 2 weeks they called 47 times. They sent emails, texts, messages through social media. Each one was a mix of guilt-tripping demands and barely veiled requests for money. They'd heard from someone that Johns Hopkins graduates get high-paying residencies. They knew I'd be making doctor money soon. They thought I could help. On the 15th day I sent one email. "You told me when I was 13 that you couldn't afford a sick child. You said Jessica had potential and I didn't. You abandoned me when I needed you most. Rachel Torres became my mother, my family, my everything. I owe you nothing. Do not contact me again. I blocked their numbers, blocked their emails, and moved on with my life. That was 3 years ago. I'm 31 now, completing my fellowship in pediatric oncology at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. I'm exactly where I want to be, doing exactly what I'm meant to do. Rachel is still in Baltimore, still working as a nurse, though she's cut back to part-time. She visits often and I go home whenever I can. We talk every single day. She's my mom, my best friend, my hero. I heard through a mutual acquaintance, someone who knew my biological family, that my parents lost their house 2 years ago. They're living in a small apartment, surviving on Social Security. Jessica apparently moved across the country and stopped talking to them after they kept asking her for money she didn't have. I feel nothing when I hear these updates. No satisfaction, no guilt, no sadness. They're strangers to me now. They made their choice 15 years ago and I made mine 3 years ago at that graduation ceremony. Sometimes people ask if I regret the speech. If I think I was too harsh. If I wonder about reconciliation. I don't regret anything. That speech wasn't about revenge. It was about truth. It was about honoring the woman who saved me and making sure the world knew what real love looks like. It was about showing every abandoned child watching that they can survive, thrive, and succeed despite the people who gave up on them. Rachel taught me that family is chosen, not given. That love is action, not words. That showing up every single day matters more than sharing DNA. I'm Dr. Sarah Torres. I beat cancer. I became a doctor. I'm saving lives just like Dr. Patterson and Rachel saved mine. And I did it all without the people who told me I wasn't worth saving. That's not revenge. That's justice. If you're watching this and you've been abandoned, rejected, or told you're not worth investing in, please hear me. Those people are wrong. Your worth isn't determined by people who couldn't see it. Your potential isn't limited by people who underestimated you. Find your Rachel. Find the people who see you, believe in you, and show up for you. Build your chosen family. And then prove every single doubter wrong by becoming exactly who you're meant to be. I'm living proof that it's possible. And to Rachel, Mom, if you're watching this, thank you. For everything. For always. I love you.